stand by for action.
Thanks for joining me. My name is Dave Miller. I am the Unpleasant Blind Guy. And this time, I'm going to be talking about civil rights leader Tommy Robinson, and I'm going to be talking a little bit more about Brexit, though that will be a secondary part of what is discussed in this program. What you will hear will be my appearance on BZ's Berserk, Bobcat, Saloon. That can be heard at 11 p.m. Eastern, Tuesdays and Thursdays on SHR Media and other outlets. So with no further ado, we join the Bloviating Zeppelin from the SHR Media studios as he begins his program, where he was kind enough to have me on as a guest.
You can listen to chat at shrmedia.com. You can also watch on two distinct and separate, great, fabulous media networks. Just started. This is only the second week on the Redcon 1 Media Network, courtesy of Big Sarge, and I greatly appreciate that. Also, we are broadcasting on the SHR Media Network. You can go to the SHR Media Facebook page or the SHR Media YouTube channel. And if you go quick like a bunny, like I said before, Redcon 1 Media. Get into your favorite search engine, Redcon 1 Media. When you're there, then go to the query for the Redcon 1 Media Facebook page, and you will be there live in this show. I do not water my politics, just like we don't water here at the Saloon. We don't water our drinks, okay? Politics, religion, crime, culture, economics, race, sex, science, law, we talk about it all right here. At the Saloon, the speech is free, but the booze is not. All we ask is that for God's sakes, common courtesy and decency, that you flush the toilet, jiggle the handle, and don't forget to tip your waitress. Tonight in the Saloon, because the Redcon 1 Media Network is new to some of the people that I have, I'm bringing back Dave Milner, who is the unpleasant blind guy who is... Okay, he's blind, but he's not unpleasant, which I think you'll be able to discern in not too terribly a far distance from now. We're going to have Dave on and talk to him about the UK Brexit, things that are going on across the pond, and also about Tommy Robinson, and I've got some audio cuts up for that as well. The second hour, we're going to be talking about happy stories and good times. Got a lot of news, got a lot of Second Amendment stuff, and then we're going to go through, what do I customarily have in the second hour? That's right, you guessed it, happy stories. Thursday, I've got a very special treat in the studio live. We're going to have James E. Horn, who is a terror and Islam expert. His CV is long and wide. He's written quite a number of books, and I'm not going to be talking to him on the phone. He's here in Sacramento for some other things, and when I contacted him, because he was going to be in Sacramento, I thought, hey, why should I talk to you over the telephone when I can have you direct here in the studio? So he's going to be here in the studio tentatively next Tuesday. And what an incredibly popular and busy dude, but he's already been on the show 3 times, and we're still sending stuff back and forth. He did say yes, but we're just confirming the time. Brendan Straka, theoretically, should be back on the show on next Tuesday night, right here, live and direct, on the SHR Media Network and the Redcon 1 Media Network. Brandon Straka, can't wait. I'm going to ask Dave Milner. Are you here, sir?
Good evening to you, Mr. BZ, sir.
Okay, great. One of the reasons, folks, this is Dave Milner, Milner, and the reason I wanted to have him on tonight, although I just had John about 2 weeks ago, but that was for an entirely different audience, and I want to try to introduce you to the Redcon Media Network audience. You have a background and a knowledge of, well, I'll tell you what, we're going to get to your social media, but if you would kind of give folks who have never heard you before, because now they're going to be a certain percentile of people that have never heard you and don't know who you are, could you give people a little bit of a background about you, where you came from, what you specialize in, what you do now, that kind of thing, so that they have a little bit of an idea about what you're about?
Okay. I began studying government and sociology and social trends and the media about 50 years ago.
Okay.
Started out as an 8-year-old kid. The shock came that made me really start to study this stuff in two ways. First of all, I sat with my parents and watched that disaster of a 1968 Democratic Party convention, and that got me to thinking about the fact that the very people who had the power to beat my rear end beat red wound up having to do things, and these were the people that were telling me I had to do things or else get a whipping, okay? And yet, they had to do things too because of this weird thing called government. And this thing called government was causing people in the streets to riot and things like that. And I didn't quite understand this. One thing I did understand was that this government thing was puppeteering some of the most powerful people in my life, my parents, my grandparents, and everything. And that made me start to study it. Of course, I watched a lot of TV and things like that as a kid, and that got me into media and watching the news a lot, because my parents watched the news a lot. And I began putting all this together and studying it and being interested in it. So you had an 8-year-old kid watching Batman and at the same time beginning this study. And then at the age of around 53, I started the Unpleasant Blind Guy. I'd been on various other programs, as a call-in, the Dennis Miller Show, Tammy Bruce, although I never called into hers, Dana Lash, things like that, okay? But I started my own show in 2013. And the Unpleasant Blind Guy has been around for almost 6 years now. Some of my favorite things I like to cover are free speech. I like to cover the Islam issue, how Islam affects us as a people and how it represents the existential threat that it does, and things of that nature. And I also get into other domestic aspects of things. Okay. So you never quite know what you're going to get with my program. And I'm on SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network on SHR Media at 1 p.m. Monday through Friday, and I have new shows on Saturday starting at midnight Eastern. So that's basically where I'm at. And I also, by the way, BZ, fell in almost 6 years ago with a group of people running a place called the English Defense League Radio Show. That's on Blog Talk Radio.
I'm glad you're doing that.
I'm getting there. I'm closing in, man. I'm closing in. I can see it. Okay. The English Defense League is basically a civil rights organization in the United Kingdom. And I liked what they had to say about how they defend, with marches and things like that, a nonviolent action. They defend the culture of the indigenous people of the United Kingdom against the onslaught of Islam. And I decided that this was a good place for me, so I've been down there for quite a while with Jeff Mitchell and with some other people. But currently it's Jeff Mitchell as the host, of course. It's a Brit program. And Jen Rennie is my kind of partner in crime on there. And we do a few shows together, including the current one that I have out at SHR Media on Spreaker. Right on, man.
Okay, can you tell folks a little bit about who Jeff Mitchell is and why he's significant to EDL?
Well, Jeff he's around your age. He grew up in southeast London. He's a true Cockney tough. And he was just going along, doing this, working here and working there and things of that nature. He's got a very interesting past. I mean, this guy actually met a couple of the Beach Boys and a couple of the Beatles in his working life. And in his travels around London and whatnot, he began to notice the influx of Islam and how mostly the Pakistani Muslims have been completely changing London over. And the prevalence of the race jihad that's been going on and the civilizational jihad that's been going on in London and things like that, he got concerned and he got involved. He started out on something called Pal Talk, which was a social media platform, and for all I know still is. The Internet Relay Chat is still out there. And eventually he fell in with the English Defense League, which I already told you about them. You can visit our show page at blogtalkradio.com, and links to the English Defense League's website and our mission statement are on there. And he fell in with them and with their leader, a man named Tommy Robinson, who we're going to talk about later, and began activities. And he said, hey, nobody's doing this. So he began to do the podcast kind of voice of the EDL. And it's an honor and a privilege to work with him.
Okay, tell folks, where you can be found on social media. And you got a space on Facebook, you've got a space on Twitter, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. You can contact me, UBG Contact on Twitter. I'm also Dave Miller on Facebook, the Tea Party Community, when that site is up. And MeWe and Aggedor, that's Aggedor, on Trumptown, and, of course, Gab.
Tonight, one of the major reasons I wanted to have you on is because of something new with Tommy Robinson. He's got essentially his own documentary out now. I think it's an hour long, an hour 3 minutes long, something like that. And it's called Panodrama. And I'm not sure I know exactly where he gets the name, but I've got a good portion of it up right now. And the release of this created a massive stir, a big row, to the point, we're going to get into some of the things that happened after the release of this. But in the UK, can you explain to folks that are listening how UK media works? In other words, there's anti-Beeb, which is the BBC, and instead of a panoply of channels like we have here in the United States, BBC is up to, 3 channels, 4 channels, 5 channels, something like that?
I think you've got 4. But what Americans need to understand here is that much of what is going on with this is intertwined with a fake advocacy group called Hope Not Hate. Now, Americans should care about this because this same quote-unquote anti-hate group advises the Huffington Post and CNN. All right, so they're already in our face. Now, what you have in the UK, yes, you have BBC. I think they have about 4 channels of TV, and they have, of course, local BBC radio and things of that nature. It's state-controlled media. Now, they claim it isn't. They claim it's its own separate corporation owned by the people and all of that. But the government have had their fingers in it ever since it was created. In fact, it was instrumental as an intelligence tool in World War II, if people go and study their history. It has become, at this time, instrumental in the march of political correctness. And they do not appreciate anyone who speaks the truth about Islam. They don't like people talking about the Islamic rape gangs. They don't like people talking about Islamic terrorism or anything of that nature. Now, you're going to play part of Panodrama. Now, people in the United States don't know what the heck that really means. It's a kind of a play on a name. Imagine Americans, easy and Americans, imagine what would happen if back in the day when Mike Wallace was doing 60 Minutes, and you can remember BZ, he was feared back then. Imagine what would happen if back in the day someone had a plant that Wallace interviewed for 60 Minutes, and then someone came on his program and he was really going to fry him. You can remember a couple of these shows where he used to do that.
Yep.
And he was just about ready to do it, and then that person said, oh, well, no, wait a minute. All that information you have is fake. And they started playing the interview that he had with them and proved that everything that Mike Wallace was doing was faked up and created to make this person he was interviewing look bad. And this is exactly what Tommy Robinson did with the host of Panorama, which is the BBC's big 60 Minutes equivalent.
Oh, okay. All right. Now I'm getting to understand why it's Panodrama. Okay. All righty.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. And that is why it is such a delicious, dare I say it, moment when John Sweeney, the host of that program, thinks that he has got the evil Haiti Tommy Robinson in his sights, and he's going to completely destroy him. And Tommy Robinson turns around and makes a complete simian out of John Sweeney. As a matter of fact, I think some monkeys at the Ape House in the Los Angeles Zoo got to look at Panodrama, and they said, wow, they really made it, he really made a humanoid out of that guy. It has to be seen to be believed.
Would this be accurate in saying that what he did is a little bit of a UK version of what James O'Keefe did in Project Veritas?
A very close approximation to it. Practically exactly like what James O'Keefe does. And this struck at the very heart of the British government's public relations war against anyone who speaks out about the threat of Islam. And I wanted to say real quick that the UK, we covered this last year on EDL Radio, the UK, actually their Home Office, their Office of Homeland Security, more or less, hired Saatchi, which is a public relations firm, to go after people like Tommy Robinson and to go after publications like Breitbart. I know my fellow Americans know what Breitbart is.
Right.
So this is the atmosphere in which all this happened.
Okay, so essentially what we have is Tommy Robinson, who was jailed essentially for daring to speak the truth in the UK, where, folks, let's remind everyone, there is no such thing as the First Amendment in the United Kingdom at all, period, end of statement. And I would submit that a great portion of the UK administrators, bureaucrats, politicians live in great fear because of the various political aspects of Islam as it impacts the UK.
They do.
And essentially Islam impacts the UK as Latinos, Hispanics tend to impact the United States of America, and certainly the southern portion of the United States of America. Now, that having been seen, the UK has pretty much a chokehold on all the TV shows, radio shows, etc. So if you want to broadcast on radio or television, you're going to go to the BBC, period, end of statement. And if they cut you off,
more or less,
then you're not going to have a very big venue to display whatever it is that you have to say. And frequently, they're not going to let you on in the first place, since one of the policies in the UK right now, certainly in the BBC, is if you are a global warming or climate denier, you're not even going to get on the BBC. The policy is such that they're not going to let you on. There will be no opposing voices on the BBC to something like that. Now, that having been said, can you imagine their chagrin, as Dave Milner just indicated, when it turns out that they've been turned upside down by their very nemesis, Tommy Robinson, who they dislike, they despise to their very core. I'm going to start just a portion of this Panodrama, and I think after a couple of minutes, you're going to get sort of the flavor of what it is that happened and how it is that they decided that they were going to turn the tables on the BBC and the media here in the United States. I call them the American media maggots. In the UK, well, you guys are going to have to figure out your own terms for this guy.
We exposed the BBC with thousands of people outside their offices in Manchester.
This is Tommy Robinson. He's holding up a big placard that says BBC Fake News.
Do not trust you anymore.
Now, this happens to be an exclusive documentary that he had filmed by himself. And, of course, as Dave indicated, it's called Panodrama, and it's subtitled An Exposé.
Explain what's going to happen next, right?
I'm being arrested. I am being arrested.
This is Tommy Robinson being arrested in Leeds, the UK.
Can we just say anything?
The content of what I'm streaming, I'm being arrested for breach of the peace. I'm being arrested for breach of the peace. You've all watched this. You've all watched this. You've all watched this. You've all watched this. Can you get me a solicitor? Can you get me a solicitor?
Can you just turn off your live feed?
Can you get me a solicitor?
Turn off your live feed, please.
Yeah?
He's essentially being arrested for live streaming.
I'm inciting on my video.
He has actually done nothing wrong.
and he's transported away. Now we're back
Since
in
my
London.
activism started over a decade ago, the establishment, the police, and the media have all been trying to take me down. The whole world saw me wrongfully imprisoned last year. 2.5 months on solitary confinement. What was the response by the media to that unlawful detention? They justified it. They lied to you. All of them reported that I pled guilty. None of them got the transcripts from the court. None of them reported the truth. We have a corrupt media.
Does that sound a little bit similar to here in the United States? Any information that you'd like to impart at this point, Dave Milner, about what Tommy Robinson is doing and saying?
Well, I just want to say that that first segment where he was arrested, this was a charge that went all the way up to the Attorney General of the United Kingdom. It was basically a misdemeanor charge where he was supposedly harassing some of the members of a Muslim rape gang who had already been convicted of their crimes. And he was interviewing them and things of that nature. And this was deemed to be, quote-unquote, disturbing the peace. It was a misdemeanor. But as I just put in chat, Tommy Robinson was sent to, first to not a terrible prison, but within a few hours, he was carted off to prison after the judge viewed about 30 seconds of his live stream. Then later, he was transported to one of the toughest prisons in the United Kingdom, again, for a misdemeanor, with Muslim terrorists and a mostly Muslim population, where he spent something close to 2.5 months in solitary confinement, having to buy his own food because he couldn't trust the food brought into him by the Muslim cooks, because there was a very real fear that he was being poisoned. And by the way, while that was going on, the Muslims on their way to their prayers and everything would do things like shove excrement through his cell door and things like that. This is how the Brit government punished him. They finally let him out after they jumped the charges, but he's still waiting to see whether or not they're going to try and bring up other charges related to this. Honestly, I don't think they are. They're just trying to keep him on tenterhooks. But that's it, basically, right there.
It has since been revealed that Tommy Robinson will be facing charges once again surrounding the original contempt of court case, which was brought 5 months ago and then dismissed. He is scheduled to appear in court on the 22nd of March, so by the time you hear this podcast, Mr. Robinson's fate could well have already been decided. This particular aspect will be that his presence and his live streaming upset the convicted Muslim rape gangsters and caused them anxiety. For this, if convicted, Tommy Robinson faces 2 years in prison. And I must say, people, that if he is imprisoned this time, a quiet death for him in prison, engineered by allies of the United Kingdom government, could well be a result.
Let's keep going with Tommy Robinson. He's got a few things to say, and then we'll see and hear how it is that he decides that he's going to have a... Because at this point, all right, let's do the obvious. Let's do BZ's reversal theory. And that's this. Let's say that there were Muslims in a jail or a prison setting, and they were afraid of the food that was being served to them by the Christians, Catholics, fill in whatever the applicable word may be. People would be corking off about that sort of thing in the United States and also across the pond in the UK. Let's continue with Tommy.
When I went to prison and 600,000 people signed a petition for my release, 30,000 people marched here demanding my release. When I come out of prison, I was completely unaware of the lengths that they were going to take me down. My PayPal was removed. That removes my ability to hire a team and work and bring you the other side of the story. My website was closed down, but I was completely unaware that Panodrama, the world's leading investigative journalist documentary, were working on a program about me with the working title, Tommy Takedown. This was their final punch.
That wasn't biased at all, was it?
They were about to discredit me to the nation. to you, the public. And I will prove that that documentary is not impartial, that it's scripted, that they invent things, that they lie, that they clip, that they edit. What you will witness in this documentary will prove to you this isn't about Tommy Robinson. This is about all the people that have been lied to, all the people who have been mislabeled, despite all their efforts to silence me.
Okay, let's stop right here. It's a good time to take a break. Folks, you're listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin. That is I, right here in the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk, Bobcat, Saloon radio show. Live and direct in the SHR Media Studios, where we are 2 miles east of the Bill Mill, the locus of evil on the entire left coast, the Capitol building in Sacramento, California at 10th and L Streets. Maybe a little bit later on I'll tell you what's been happening around here, literally around the studios, and also up and down the street adjacent us, and also near City Hall, and also at the Capitol building, and what may occur in the future. The reason I wanted to play this, and the reason I wanted to have Dave Milner on tonight, is some people who may be listening may say something similar to, who gives a crap about some British dude, some white guy, that thinks that he's been oppressed? Oh, boo-hoo on him. Do you see the linkages between what's been occurring with him and any other situation that's been occurring here and will continue to occur in the United States of America? As Tommy Robinson just said, it's not all about him. It's about everything else, essentially, meaning that if the UK can do that to Tommy Robinson, and the American media maggots can do what they wish with President Donald John Trump and anyone who remotely is linked to him in any way, be it administrative, bureaucratically, politically, or if you just happen to vote for the guy. Well, if they can do that to him, and they can do it to Trump, what do you think may possibly be the reason for anyone deciding not to do that to you? We were listening to a little bit of the Tommy Robinson film, a documentary called Panodrama. Dave Milner, can you give us an overall gist of what the new documentary by Tommy Robinson, what he's done with it?
It basically turns the table, easy on the tables, as I should say, on the BBC. The BBC were planning to do a total hit piece on Tommy Robinson and make him out to be a hater and someone who, well, they were actually going to try and prove, quote unquote, that he threatened to kill one of his former employees. That was one of the things they were going to try to do. That was the big part of the Trump card that they were going to use. But of course, they were going to go along with a lot of the lies, for instance, that Facebook has told, which are that he wants people to kill Muslims, he wants people to hurt Muslims, he's a racist, he's a homophobe, he's a xenophobe, he's a thisophobe, he's a thatophobe. All these things. It was going to be a huge hit piece on this very popular and dominant documentary program in the UK. And Tommy Robinson, in I think what is one of the best documentaries I've seen in 50 years of studying this stuff, turned the tables on. And I don't know how you feel about the quality of the documentary, but I thought it was excellent.
It was very well done. Well, as you might expect, what occurred is that it got him further kicked off a whole bunch of media sites, as you would expect, because, hey, if you're going to be discriminatory, you might as well be discriminatory in a much wider and broader fashion. So here's what happened next to Tommy Robinson.
All right, guys. So what Tommy Robinson has warned us and predicted for a while now has finally happened. He has officially been banned from Facebook and Instagram. YouTube will follow, as we've seen with other conservatives around the world. Now, it was only a few days ago where Tommy said to me in Manchester, he goes, Avi, I reckon as soon as I release this Panodrama film online, I will be censored, I'll be banned.
Yes.
And guess what? Imagine my shock. Only 24 hours after he released Panodrama on Facebook, his page disappeared. But if they reckon this is going to silence Tommy, they've got another thing coming. Because there's a man that, hell, jail didn't work. So you think some Facebook jail is going to work?
Yeah.
For a few months now, we've been preparing for this. We've been building up for the launch, the tr.news launch, via the globalaim.uk page, a website. And I encourage you all to go there, put your name and email there, because that is where Tommy is going to be able to reach you directly, the people. It's going to show the establishment, the media, the social media giants that they can't dictate who speaks, what you get to hear, what you get to read, what news gets filtered through.
Let's stop right there just for a second. I sent this to President Trump, and it's like farting in the wind, I know that. But I said, let me throw this out to you, Dave Milner, and anybody and everybody that's listening on the Redcon One Media and also on the SHR Media Network. What do you think would happen? I pose this question to one and all, people listening live in chat and also in the podcast. What do you think would happen if one day, tomorrow, President Trump decided, you know what, I'm giving up Twitter, and from now on, all of my communications are going to be on Gab.ai or Spreely or something like that. What do you think would happen to Twitter if Donald John Trump, the guy with the dead orange cat on his head, completely abandoned the standard leftist media platforms, essentially semi-deplatforming them because you know for a fact hundreds of thousands, perhaps even millions of people who were primarily on Twitter now migrated over to whatever platform he went to. That's the point. That's the point of Dave. That's the point of me. That's the point of Tommy Robinson. That's the point of the guy that just was speaking right there. His name is Avi Yemini. That's the entire point of this is where is it that we can find a good, reliable platform for conservatives where we won't be shut down? Just as Dave said, just as Avi indicated, and Tommy Robinson himself said, he was completely deplatformed off of Facebook. Dave Milner, now back to you. Was or is Tommy Robinson, is he already off of Twitter? My guess would be he's already been kicked off Twitter.
Yes, he's off of Twitter. He's also off of Instagram. That happened, by the way, Panodrama premiered last Saturday. And by Monday, he was off of Facebook and Instagram. He had already been kicked off of Twitter. And Facebook has been acting in a manner that can only be called Stalin-esque. If you put up on your account, I am Tommy, you get a ban. If you put up pictures of Tommy Robinson now, people are getting warnings. Any page that praises Tommy Robinson as its primary mission is being shut down. They want to literally remove Tommy Robinson's words and his images and everything from the entire Facebook universe. And again, if you study your history, this is exactly what Stalin did during the purges. Even if someone was a high party official who had pictures taken with Stalin and things of that nature, he made sure that those pictures were blanked out. He made sure, of course, that their words were gone. And a lot of this was instigated, we know, by a fellow from the BBC, a BBC employee named Mohammed Safiq.
Okay.
Not only did he do these things, he admitted that he did these things. You can find that proof on a thing called the Timcast. Look for that on YouTube. And yes, he went on, I believe Safiq went on Twitter and said, oh yes, I was a part of getting Tommy Robinson kicked off of Facebook and Instagram, and now I'm going to talk to Google about kicking him off of YouTube. YouTube and TR.news are Tommy Robinson's last two places that he has a platform to speak out. And yes, you're absolutely right, BZ. When it comes to platforms for conservatives, not only are we losing these platforms, Liver Gab earlier last year was deplatformed completely, and they had to get back on their feet. They're back now. But this is also a loser for places like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and places like that. Remember what Ted Koppel said. You mentioned President Trump. Remember what Ted Koppel said about the media and President Trump. He said that President Trump is the best thing that ever happened to the media as far as ratings go. And he was absolutely right.
He is right. He's done more to promote them, unfortunately in a negative way. He's done for the media what he's done for politicians. If he were not there, you would have Hillary Clinton, and you would not really have discovered the true nature of leftists in politics, nor would you have discovered the absolute craven cowards that are what I term the American media maggots here in the United States. The depth and breadth to which they will go in order to ensure that, like many rows of mushrooms, you are kept in the dark and fed shit.
Mm-hmm. Oh, nice.
And it's unfortunately very true. But without Donald Trump being here, all of these other things that you intuited, naturally, I believe, would not have come and been exposed. And I've said for quite some time, this is just the tip of the iceberg, and I think there is much more yet to come. I have another brief cut that I'd like to play. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to all of it. Now Tommy Robinson is being intimidated at his house by the far left, and they're working with jihadi lawyers and the various forms of media. And this is Tommy Robinson.
This is one of his live feeds.
Yes.
Hello. So, I'm going live because I've just got back to an airport in London, and I've been made aware that today a lawyer who represents jihadis, Shamina Begum, the jihadi bride, and many jihadis, has, on a Sunday, from his office, accompanied by 3 mainstream media journalists, accompanied by far-left hate groups. So the collusion again for everyone to see, the far left working with the media, and this time with a jihadi lawyer, has gave documentation with what he claims is my address to a far left group to deliver to me, even though they know I'm in Finland, so they know I'm not in the country. So they take that opportunity. They take that opportunity for no other reason other than intimidation to an address that they believe, that they say is where I live. Now, in that address, and then they say, I phoned the police. I knew nothing until I've just stepped off this plane. Now, in that address that you...
Okay, let's stop right there for a second because I'm running out of time for the first hour. Essentially, what we have there is a situation with Tommy Robinson in which he is being doxxed by the left. And that occurred to a number of politicians on the right already in D.C. And it is a way that the left has of exposing your name, your address, any information they could possibly come in possession of, and spread it out on the internet so that your life from that point on is made essentially a living hell. I'd like to change topics just a little bit. Let's talk about Brexit. And one of the things that Dave Milner does is he keeps abreast of what's happening in Brexit. I have a story about Brexit involving French President Emmanuel Macron. But before I get to this article, is there anything that you might have or like to add about anything involving the status of Brexit right now? Dave Milner.
Well, it is currently in flux, waiting for another vote in the UK Parliament. And some of the biggest stumbling blocks to the whole thing. You have 2 possible outcomes. You have Theresa May's quote-unquote deal, which will keep the UK in Europe somewhat, although it will also make for a Brexit. But it will be very close to a Brexit in name only. It won't be a true Brexit. Then you have the possible no-deal scenario, which would basically just have the UK leaving the EU. And the EU, of course, is still demanding money, even if there is a no-deal Brexit. And the Irish border backstop, which is covered in my current show, by the way, is still a hot issue because of the possible abrogation of the 1998 Good Friday Agreement, which stopped a good deal of the IRA terrorism, which went on. So it is very much in flux at this point. And you have strong forces trying for a sort of a half-arsed remain in Europe thing, and you have other forces, including, I want to add, a former MI6 chief who says that the current Brexit deal would not help the UK and would, in fact, induce more mass migration of Mohammedans into the country. That's where it stands at the moment.
In this Daily Mail article, this is an organ of the UK. The headline is this: Brexit is an irresponsible lie peddled by angermongers, backed by fake news, that has caused Europe's biggest crisis since World War II. And I find that I find it interesting that the UK uses this word, rages French President Emmanuel Macron. And the story goes, Emmanuel Macron has branded Brexit an irresponsible lie, calling it Europe's worst crisis since World War II. In his most ferocious attack on Brexit to date, the French president said Britain's withdrawal was peddled by angermongers and fake news and offers nothing. So he published his open letter in 22 EU languages, shared it on his Twitter feed, just weeks before Britain leaves the 28-member union. They're still raging at this. Does anybody have any prognostications, Dave Milner, as to, or is it just so desperately up at the air that at this point no one has an idea if the UK will leave the European Union or not?
Well, first of all, it's going to be delayed a couple of years, at least. We're thinking that it's probably, we being the EDL radio team, are thinking it's going to be at least until 2020 before any true exit from Europe can happen. Now, whether there's a deal at that point or not, again, it's still very much up in the air because you had 17.5 million people who voted to leave. And they didn't vote to leave with a deal. They didn't vote to leave with a big $93 billion plus.
Yeah.
Might as well call it $100 billion sweetener given to Europe. They didn't vote for any of that mess. They just voted to leave.
Yeah, there was no asterisk. There was no asterisk after that where it said asterisk, except for this and that and the other thing. By the way, also, since you mentioned that, I believe I found the article with which you were referring just a minute or so earlier. This, too, is from the Daily Mail. Former MI6 chief blasts PM's Brexit deal as disastrous and warns it will lead to no control over EU migration. A former head of MI6 has said a no-deal Brexit puts Britain in a stronger position than Theresa May's deal in a stinging attack. Sir Richard Dearlove called the Prime Minister's deal disastrous, adding it offers no tangible benefits for Britain and will lead to no control over EU migration. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that's what you were directly referring to.
It is, and I want to say that this is important also to Americans. This is why I did a whole series on this, and the last part of that series is coming out on Saturday. These superstates are not doing anything to help us, especially with things like mass migration and things of that nature. We can already see the negative effects of it here in the United States of America. That's why I got involved with EDL Radio close to 6 years ago. Not only does the UK need to remove itself from the EU, we need to remove ourselves from the United Nations because these superstates are dissolving our sovereignty with the help of leftist politicians in our countries, and we need to do what we can to stop this.
We got 5 more minutes.
Oh, no.
In those 5 more minutes, I found in that period of time, I found another article that directly affects people in the UK. And this is, well, it's here in the United States, and it will, I suspect, in the future, possibly take this kind of turn or tone as well. This is from BBC News. I'm kind of surprised that the BBC News is covering it. The headline reads, "Bacon and butter banned from farm drop London Underground advert." Now, why might that be, I wonder, as BZ scratches his head? An advert designed to run on the London Underground was rejected because it contained bacon, butter, eggs, and jam, an online supermarket said. Farm Drop submitted a photograph which included images of the meat, dairy products, and spread. Transport for London, TfL, said it was up to advertisers to make sure any items featured were high-fat, sugar, and salt, HFSS compliant. Okay, so leftists are getting into what it is that you can see in an advertisement. That's how in the tank the media is in the United Kingdom as well. I want to cover this real quick, and I know you did too before we go. This was a story that you pointed out to me, and it occurred, I think it came out last week, but this is from the Washington Examiner. And it points out something very, very obvious, but it also is a great indicator of things that are occurring now in the media and things that, of course, will occur in the future. The headline on this is Too Little Too Late. Washington Post admits it screwed up big in the Covington Catholic story. Imagine that. But like I've said in the past, isn't it kind of amazing the difference that, I don't know, I think it's like a $250 million defamation lawsuit by a high school kid brought by a high-powered attorney. Isn't that amazing? What a difference that lawsuit can make. The Washington Post published an editor's note Friday evening admitting, way too late, that it badly bungled its coverage of the Covington Catholic High School story. And as a result, the Washington Post, where I say democracy, they say their motto is democracy dies in darkness. I say democracy dies right there in D.C. Anyway, any final thoughts about that particular story, Dave Miller?
Well, I gave it to you as kind of a bridge. I mean, over in the UK, you have what's happening with Tommy Robinson, with, for instance, his wife and children, aged 7 to 10, being harassed by a gang of Antifa scuzzballs with a pit bull, and being assisted by two newspaper, quote-unquote, journalists and ITV News with a camera. You have that going on in the UK. And over here, you have this high school kid from Covington just basically being blasted on every American media outlet that there is. Bill Maher saying he wants to punch him in the face. And now they're having to backtrack because everything they said were lies, just as everything that they're saying about Tommy Robinson is a lie. The fact is, they don't like the fact that the Covington kid wears a MAGA hat and supports the president, and they don't like the fact that Tommy Robinson tells the truth about Islam. So they create these fantasies about them, and then they throw them to the mercy of the mob. This has to stop.
Well, absolutely it does. Doxing has to stop. Because what works for the left also happens to work for the right, but unfortunately the left, that thank God in some ways, leftists don't understand this bidirectional function. And that is now, especially with kids, a 16-year-old, this stuff will follow him no matter what anyone says. This stuff will follow him until the end of his days because you can't remove it from the internet. Conversely, all the rest of this ridiculous crap that goes on at the behest of leftists, that is also immured equally well on the internet. Dave Milner, thanks for being on in the first hour right here.
There's a commonality going on, BZ, between the patriots who are across the pond and our patriots here in the United States of America. And that's why I do what I do. And there you are. I want to thank you for having me on tonight. It is very much appreciated. And look forward to being on again sometime. And hope you'll come on my show sometime.
Well, I will.
And again, thank you, sir. I very much appreciate it. Good evening to you. And as we say on the EDO radio show, no surrender, ever.
That's correct. Folks, that was Dave Milner. Greatly appreciated. Kudos to him. I'll say it with finality for tonight. I'll be back on Thursday. You can't make this up. Lord knows everyone has been trying in the deep state and elsewhere to bring down Donald John Trump because he doesn't play nicely in the political sandbox, and he's made primarily, at least up to this point, of Teflon, and we have to bring him down because we've never encountered anybody like this before, and he's not marching to the tune that we demand, is he?
Make no mistake, people. The UK government wants Tommy Robinson dead. They want his opinions gone. They want his followers neutralized. And the left in the United States of America want the exact same thing. And that is why you, as an American, should care what happens to Tommy Robinson, even though he's some guy over in England. I will be covering more of this in subsequent shows. And again, I want to thank the Bloviating Zeppelin of BZ's Berserk, Bobcat, Saloon for having me on his program. And I'm going to do something a little bit unusual. This is an unusual year, after all, for the Unpleasant Blind Guy as a show. This time, I'm going to let BZ talk my show out by talking his show out. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for listening. May your God go with you. And Mr. BZ, take it away.
Monsieur has been lost!
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thanks for listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk, Bobcat, Saloon radio show right here, live and direct on the SHR Media Network. If you want to contact me, you can find me on Twitter at bzepp, my blog at bloviatingzeppelin.net. Thanks to Redcon One Media for simulcasting my show. Promotional consideration is by the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works and the Boeing Company. If it ain't Boeing, I ain't going. And also Pratt & Whitney Engines, Thrust. You can trust. Tiaras are by My Little Pony. Thanks to my personal KC-135 Kettle One refueling team, with whom I will be consorting in less than an hour. And thank you ever so kindly for listening live. Thanks to Dave Milner in the first hour. Thanks to everybody for being in chat. Thanks for listening in podcast later on. I appreciate each and every one of you, each and every hour that you take to listen to me. You got a busy day and a busy night, so thank you for that. I'll be back on Thursday night. Thanks to Redcon One, thanks to SHR. Everybody, please, God bless, take care, be safe. See you then.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children.
Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night,
Jim Bob. Go to sleep.
Good night, and good luck.
Now for Dave's Canes. Extras that help you navigate the new media world.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on shrmedia.com.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
The new show on the SHR Media Network, Sackheads Against Tyranny. On shrmedia.com. Go there quick like a bunny, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, every Wednesday. Live and direct on the SHR Media Network. shrmedia.com. Be there.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capital, the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad.
Hey girls, Carry Girl Gear is here. More and more women every day are concealed carrying, participating in competitive shooting, and getting firearms training. It's not a boys' club anymore, and we don't have to shop in their stores anymore either. Finally, a cool and unique clothing line just for women. Dope tees and hats for the patriotic concealed carry and 2A girl. So what are you waiting for? Go check out carrygirlgear.com today.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.